OMG, it's about to happen. So, of the 9 visionaries joining us on the WWE Presents 2020 Vision Tour, Your Life in Focus, there's only one man. But when it's one of the most recognizable, big-hearted,
that's real,
delightful, fun, strong people on the planet, he's all you need. Please welcome Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson.
What the? Fine. Who needs them when I got the Read My Mind Radio family? Read my mind. Read my mind. Radio. 2020 is ableist AF. I'm talking about this idea of perfect vision, used as a metaphor for a flawless plan or strategy, objective or goal.
2020 Vision, 10 programming strategies for a successful year.
And yes, even sight. So much of this is perception, which is subjective. Assigning the label of perfect to something automatically creates a ranking system or hierarchy. It's not surprising that so many people in 2019 and earlier decided that 2020, the number associated with perfect vision, was an indication of a better time to come in their lives. The time to create or invoke that plan, maybe get into shape, return to school, start that new career. Whatever it was, 2020 began with real optimism. In my early days of adjusting to becoming blind, I can recall declaring random days, months, and years as my time, the right time to start fresh, to look at the future with real hope, seeing only opportunity. I too kicked off 2020 with this energy for very specific reasons. That includes personal opportunities that were presenting themselves. Nothing grandiose, but some that I could eventually see as the early steps in building a solid foundation. One of the themes of 2020 has to be adjusting. Read My Mind Radio has been focusing on this for years. Victoria Clare, an artist in the UK, helped me kick off the year with her story of adjusting to blindness, or as they like to say over there in the UK, sight loss.
I went out of my dad's shed. I got a big old block of wood, stole some of his chisels, used his mallet and started creating. It was amazing. It turned my world around because it made me realise, okay, I've been diagnosed with this sight loss, but nobody's taken away the skills that I've always had. They're still there. More
on her latest artistic endeavor a little later. February came around and I was feeling pretty good. I was swimming on a regular basis, which truly means a great deal to me. That itself is an access story for another time. I also got the chance to introduce you to my man, Ajani A.J. Murray. In his episode, Starting with Imagination, we see that no matter the disability, the idea that begins with our thought or imagination can sometimes be delayed by access. Notice I said delayed, not halted or deferred.
I always had this dream of being an actor. It was something that was always looming in the back of my mind. It was always in my spirit, but I didn't know how to physically make the connection, or I couldn't necessarily afford acting classes at the time. And I wasn't in high school at the time to be a part of an acting club.
That idea of working within your reach continued. In the episode, Climbing Accessible Heights with Matthew Schifrin, Matt talked about his work with Lego and the objective of his advocacy to give that access to others.
I just wanted people to have this resource because I had benefited so much from it. Not all blind kids have people who can write instructions for them. Everyone deserves to be able to build and to learn from what they build.
Sharing our experiences with others is so important. Dr. Mona Minkara from Planes, Trains, and Canes used the power of show, not tell, to capture the wide range of responses to a blind person traveling alone. And as we know, those reactions are filled with nuance. You said he was nice?
I'm saying he was nice. Yeah.
Did you feel that way in the beginning? From the video, I took this guy like he was being condescending.
Oh, he was totally being condescending. I think it's just the norm there to kind of treat people with disabilities like we are a bunch of 5-year-olds.
Traveling is less about the destination than the journey. In the episode John Samuels, Guided by Angels, we see it's about who you're traveling with and what you do once you arrive. And you just happen to be standing next to her. There's such a pattern with you.
Right, I know, man. I can't make this up. I got angels all over the place.
While many people were progressing with their 2020 vision plans, looming underneath it all was COVID-19. We were advised to take individual precautions. Wash your hands. Don't touch your face. Use hand sanitizer. And somehow, that translated to get as much toilet paper as you can. I invited my wife Marlette on to compare what we experienced as a family adjusting to blindness and what the world was going through in the midst of the pandemic.
Social distancing, that's funny to me because no one really came around. We understood about social distancing. People were doing that to us for quite some time, distancing themselves from us.
Damn.
Well, it's true.
If 2020's perfect visual acuity has shown us anything, it's the inequity in our society. COVID-19 zoomed in on the drastic differences within healthcare.
The pandemic appears to be disproportionately affecting people of color.
African Americans have been hit hardest by the virus. Despite accounting for 14% of Michigan's population, they represent 41% of its COVID victims.
In the same episode, Corona, So Many Parts, I went on to compare the adaptations made in society in response to the corona with those people with disabilities have been seeking for years. All of a sudden,
I like your idea.
Have you noticed all of the corporations now accommodating employees with work from home access? The online conferences and entertainment now available? Everything getting done online. If inaccessibility is man-made, then maybe man can fix it.
That's right. That's right.
Swindler, scam artist, liar, snake oil peddler, divider. Yet in this past election, many have and continue to support him and his White House administration. Some of those supporters, I'm sure, have the absolute worst intentions. They are white nationalists. But there are some who have simply been played. And one of the rules that we need to remember is that everyone gets got at some point in their lives. I shared a story where I was duped into being a part of a dog and pony show disguised as a demonstration and discussion about blindness. Well, in this particular case, while the dog and ponies sat up in front and this one off to the side a bit, the sighted donors were led into their temporary world of vision loss. Reluctantly at first, one after the other, each slowly began trying on the glasses. Oh my. Wow. Oh my. Wow. Where did you go, Jeannie? And then the real fun began as they exchanged glasses with one another, laughing as they realized how little they could actually see, unable to find things they placed on the conference table, the host joking as she moved their cups of coffee. Meanwhile, the dogs and ponies sat up front, while the jackasses continued with their disability experiment. Empathy? I didn't see that, but a check was written. I don't remember how the event finally ended, but I do know that was it for me. I checked out.
There's an old saying in Tennessee, I know it's in Texas, probably in Tennessee, that says, fool me once, shame on you. It fooled me, we can't get fooled again.
You know, learn from your experiences. Hey, do you enjoy listening to this podcast? Do you have a topic you want to recommend? Reach out. Email readmymindradio@gmail.com or call 570-798-7343 and leave a voicemail like this.
I'm calling because I listened to the Read My Mind, and I thought that episode on Charles Blackwell was just fantastic.
That was actually Mr. Blackwell himself playing a little joke on me. He said I could use it, and I would either way because he doesn't have a computer, so he won't find out. If you do have a computer or a phone that's online and you want to stay updated to what's happening here, subscribe wherever you get podcasts. Transcripts and more are over on readmymind.com. That's R to the E-I-D.
D, and that's me in a place to be.
Like my last name. And now, back to the episode.
Come on, chop, chop! The doctor will see you now.
Well, not really. But let me break down 2020 as a fraction signifying normal vision. The numerator, the top number in the fraction, represents 20 feet. The denominator represents the distance in feet where a normally sighted person can see that same thing. So someone with 20/20 vision is seeing as expected. A person with 2200 can see from 20 feet away what a normally sighted person sees from 200 feet. When it comes to an awareness of police brutality, black people been having 20/20 vision. But too much of America has been hovering around that 2200 acuity. They've been legally blind to police brutality forever. There's no lens to help them see the systematic racism not only in the police departments across this nation, but also throughout our society. At least, not long enough to actually do something about it. The COVID-19 pandemic created the environment enabling the magnification of the brutal killing of George Floyd, the murder of Breonna Taylor, and the injustice that followed. I wanted to be hopeful that the initial attention and outrage would be a catalyst for real change throughout society. I talked about how these events have and continue to impact me and my family. I even talked about it in the realm of blindness advocacy. All the organizations that are either of or for the blind seem to really want the same thing: independence, security, opportunity for all blind people. Who are they really including? For some, learning how to use a white cane, access technology, or some other blindness skills training isn't going to be enough to have an opportunity to reach that goal. For me personally, to believe these organizations and others are really about independence for all, I'm going to have to see them making some moves. That should come from those in power right now. The process of changing perceptions is a long and difficult one. Right now, I'll accept the first step on that journey when I hear it said, Black Lives Matter.
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 I've been thinking about these intersections and specifically about the experiences of black disabled people, no matter the disability. So I teamed up with RMM Radio alumni, AJ, to co-produce and host Young, Gifted, Black, and Disabled. Along with our guests, Rashira Dobson and D'Arcy Charrington, we talked about all sorts of issues, including the lack of black disabled images in the media.
Struggling with low self-esteem growing up, I think it had a lot to do with the fact that I was reading Essence Magazine, Ebony Magazine, Jet Magazine, reading the stories of Toni Morrison and hearing the Black struggle, but I never read about the disability struggle. It matters. It really does.
Yet D'Arcy shared how there's so much to be proud about.
I was just thinking of the Morpheus quote from The Matrix Reloaded, which I recently saw, when he was in Zion and he was talking to everyone, trying to calm them down. And what he said is, what I remember most is after a century of struggle, I remember that which matters most.
We are still here!
That resonates so deeply with who I am as a person. The more I learn about disabled history and the more I learn about like Black history and how they intersect, it just makes me even prouder to be the type of person that I am.
The full story of the Black experience hasn't been written yet. There are plenty more chapters yet to be explored.
That exploration includes the experiences of people like artist, poet, writer, Mr. Charles Curtis Blackwell, and his words of hope and inspiration.
I realized, okay, God gave me this talent, and with this talent, he's kind of helped raise me up from that bed of poor self-esteem, lift me up and encourage me and inspire me. And I have to take care of this talent. I have to nourish it, be kind to it, treat it right, and try to use it.
With over 250,000 people lost from COVID in the U.S. alone, and millions of people affected, it's hard to say anything good came out of the pandemic. I did, however, have to acknowledge the accessible content coming from the team that brings you the Superfest Film Festival. Director of the Paul K. Longmore Institute on Disability Center, Kathy Cudlick, talked about the types of films featured at Superfest.
We highlight what we think is Disability 201, films that share the creativity and the ingenuity or the unexpectedness or intersections of disability with other kinds of identities.
Associate Director of the Longmore Center and Superfest Coordinator Emily Badix talked about the festival's commitment to access, including audio description.
So much of our work is working with these filmmakers to teach them and think about the process and have tough conversations as we do it, so that hopefully people are thinking about it in advance of making their films.
This year we featured a bit of a history lesson on audio description. Rick Boggs of Audio Eyes took us through the involvement of blind people in AD from its inception.
Audio description was created by blind people, and every innovation and advancement in audio description that has really contributed to what it is now was made by blind people.
We continue with IDC's Director of Audio Description, Eric Wickstrom, on what makes quality AD.
There's too much good enough is good enough. For us and our standards at IDC, no, we're not striving for good, we're striving for great.
The script is that important. So I spoke with head audio description writer at IDC, Liz Gutman.
I go to work every day and I get to write, think hard about the best way, the most vivid and concise way to convey something that's on screen, so that someone who's listening to it will get the same feeling that I have watching it.
Flipping the script on audio description, where we expanded the conversation to be a bit more critical and inclusive in those involved in AD from varying perspectives. Like media accessibility provider Alejandra Ospina.
I do closed captioning, and I do transcription, and I do translation and audio description. So I like to imagine that the things I'm doing all sort of promote access to content.
In the second installment, we heard from 4 voiceover artists also narrating AD. We talked a bit about the inequities and the importance of authentic voice representation. Ingrid Tudor, well, she just broke it down to the very last compound. Shouldn't anyone with a suitable, clear voice just be able to voice characters or narrate films no matter their race, ethnicity?
Hold on a minute. 400 years, we haven't had the opportunity to do a lot of stuff. Take a seat for a moment, because I guarantee your seat for a moment will not end up being 400 years. Then, when we get to the place where everybody can do everything, that's fine. But we're not there yet, and we need to catch up. So give us a minute, okay?
There it is. We went outside of the U.S. in the third installment. No real surprise. The guidelines used in Canada and the UK tend not to include race, color, or ethnicity in audio description. Fortunately, there's people like Rebecca Singh of Superior Description Services in Toronto who are changing that.
I feel like I owe it to the listener, and the listener is not necessarily a middle-class, cisgender, white female or a male. And sometimes I feel like from some of the teaching and reading and some of the history from what I've seen of audio description and words that are used, it's really taking one particular perspective that is exclusionary and also not fair to people who are Black, Indigenous, or people of color.
2020 doesn't seem very fair. The success achieved by other countries in their handling of this virus shows this pandemic could have just been a thing. Way too many lives lost that could have been prevented if we all spent a bit more time adjusting. If only we learned from our past. You know, 2020 hindsight? Oh, wait.
Hindsight is 2020. A toast to the past, but here's to the future. 2020.
Let me send a big shout out to all of the Read My Mind Radio family. Whether you've been rocking with me for just a few episodes or 100 plus. One of our family members and alumni, Victoria Claire, reached out during the pandemic to see if I'd be interested in collaborating with her on a song that she was writing. She wanted to include a rap break and thought I could make it work. I said yes! The song is available just about wherever you buy or stream music. It's called By Any Means. It's an upbeat dance track written to empower and inspire women who reach that point when they need to go inward and pull out that strength. I'll link to the track on this episode's blog post. If you like what's been happening here on the podcast, please pass it on. I know there's a lot of people who would benefit from meeting others impacted by all degrees of blindness and disability. Some have asked if there's a way to financially contribute to the show. If you are so inclined, you can donate via PayPal to readmymindradio@gmail.com. All funds go to supporting the podcast. Finally, I want to close this episode a bit differently in memory of someone I lost this year, a teacher of mine. When we finished our conversations, he said, "May we remain." And I think of that now like a little prayer. Read My Mind Radio family, I wish you all a very joyous holiday season and great things in 2021. May we remain.